North Korea, there is no discussion of sex, reproduction, or the human body. There are various reasons why sex education can be non-existent in North Korea. It may be a hangover of the country's strict Confucian background, a history shared with its southern equivalent before the peninsula's separation. Until recently, South Korea was likewise exceedingly socially conservative, with premarital sex or any subject about adult bodies regarded as either entirely taboo or intensely awkward at best. But North Koreans also live in a culture cloaked in secrecy and are insulated from information that is not state-approved. People are not allowed to ask for such items to be included in the curriculum, as such a request would be viewed as a criticism of the state's education. Nor are they authorized to vent any issues linked to the repercussions of not having sufficient, even rudimentary, sex education. There is no physical or political room for individuals to voice any unhappiness with their rule or any extension of it. Therefore, sex education remains firmly off-limits.
Young adults engaged in these prohibited behaviors, or who talk about them, are deemed too free-spirited, independent, and wild, which are thinly veiled descriptions of those thought to constitute moral and political challenges to society. If someone is so free with his body, then he can easily gain confidence to break the law and be a danger in the eyes of the regime. Indeed, the lack of sex education is as much a political issue as a personal one. Ultimately, a North Korean citizen's body belongs to the state. Citizens are not allowed to go beyond their towns without the authorities' consent. International travel requires the regime's official approval, and attempts to leave the nation without such permission are punishable by death. The fact that most North Koreans live, work, and die in their hometowns adds another dimension, holding back the flow of information.
Will the situation improve? There are hopeful signals that it might. The wives of the first two North Korean leaders were never in the public eye. Portraying the leader as the country's father and not the father of his own family was part of establishing the image that he was living a life of the highest sacrifice for the nation's population. This public relations tactic seems to have evolved under President Kim Jong-un. His wife, Ri Sol-ju, is regularly seen in public, tenderly holding her husband's arm, and is present at critical meetings. This may be a signal from the top that the position of women in North Korean culture is changing. Indeed, there is enough to suggest women are getting more of a voice in North Korean culture. Since the 1990s, North Koreans have turned to small private markets to sustain themselves. While spouses would often go to work, housewives ran these private markets. This enabled many women to bring in extra and, at times, primary money to their households and, from there, to achieve more leverage and agency.
This might assist women one day in getting practical and relevant information on health and reproduction. Then there is the fact that, despite the government's greatest efforts, information from the outside world does make its way into North Korea. USBs and DVDs are smuggled across the border, allowing a peek into the lives of people outside the country, including their personal lives. North Koreans have reported watching Chinese and Russian movies as well as Titanic, James Bond, and US soap operas like Desperate Housewives. South Korean television operas that feature amorous sequences, though not always blatantly sexual ones, are also viewed. North Koreans are living in what South Korea was in the 1970s, conservative, traditional, and patriarchal. But North Koreans learn and adapt quite quickly.
The flowers of the generation pushing one side of the wheel of revolution, a particular aspect of top-down gender politics, is exhibited in how the state identifies and recognizes women. In the statement published ahead of the centennial of Kim Il-sung's birth in 2012, Kim Jong-un underlined the role of women. While identifying women the customary way, those capable of pushing one side of the wheel of revolution, he newly labeled them as the flowers of the generation in a statement.
Socially, the culture of calling women flowers, or applauding their hard work by likening them to flowers, has also grown. The popular 1991 song, "Women Are Flowers," describes women who take care of the family, nurture children, and support society as flowers of living, flowers of happiness, and flowers of the nation. Also, after the arduous march, March 9th International Women's Day became a day when husbands cooked breakfasts and gave flowers to their spouses. Such a convention indicated the restoration of the family and daily life, which was shattered during the arduous march, and flowers act as symbols for recognizing women's hard work. Mother's Day has also become a day for distributing flowers to women. Kim Jong-un designated November 16th as Mother's Day in 2012 and held the 4th National Mothers Convention. International Women's Day, Mother's Day, and the National Mothers Convention all hold ceremonial elements that pay honor to women as demonstrations of sincere and noble thanks from the party and the public. These are national ceremonies that publicly commemorate women's commitments to the survival of the family despite economic difficulties.
In North Korea, female appearances and apparel are subjects of state supervision. As Kim Jong-un defined the national vision of his era as becoming a civilized socialist country, the control over female attire and bodies likewise unfurled in keeping with the objective. The new control does not deviate much from the conventional demand for elegance and chaste. However, North Korea is also facing slight changes toward more personal preferences and self-expression, as can be seen from the quote, "One must choose apparel of one's taste and dress in style to overly express a sense of culture."
Female attire throughout the early stage of the Kim Jong-un era, like in earlier times, has been dealt with from the perspective of enlightenment and control. Women were asked to dress like modest and civilized Joseon women, and in line with the demands of the time. They were also obligated, as mothers who are mirrors to their children, to educate their children to dress and style their hair modestly. Clothes that were too tight, short, black, soiled, ostentatious, and flashy were subject to regulation. Although women's desire to adorn themselves is regarded as stemming from the absorption of decadent foreign cultures and is also under societal management and control, women's desire to preen themselves as self-expression is being newly developed under national planning. Scrutiny has been eased on attire, hairdos, cosmetics, and other parts of the female body and appearance thanks to women who have made their self-expressive wants socially known, building on their economic power. Such a transformation is boosting women's demands for self-expression. 2018 Korean Woman articles include cultural garments such as traditional attire, Western clothing, and hairpieces in much more diverse colors and styles and introduce a lot of cosmetics and beauty information.
Partial loosening of national control over the female body is a projection of North Korean society and women's increasing desire to differentiate and express themselves through dress, hair, cosmetics, and decorations. Also, it projects the policy's focus on increasing the overall standard of living by diversifying the spending patterns of the inhabitants. In North Korea, ideal female figures include Kang Pan-sok, Kim Il-sung's mother, and Kim Jong-suk, Kim Jong-il's mother. The women in the Kim Il-sung family are portrayed as the standard model of good wives, wise moms, revolutionaries reflecting a revolutionary spirit, and mothers who are loyal and make sacrifices.
A dictionary definition of mother provides an interesting insight into the role of mothers in North Korean society. The first definition of mother in the revised edition of the Grand Dictionary of Korean, published in 2017, states, "A female adult of the family that gave birth to oneself," while the first definition of father in the same dictionary states, "The husband of the mother who bore oneself or a person in such status of the family." While mothers are defined directly as the child, fathers are primarily defined as the husbands of a mother. Genealogically, the 1956 Abridged Dictionary for Joseon Language describes a father as a male that gave birth to oneself or a male is in such status, but altered to mother's husband, as early as the early 1960s. After the late 1960s, when Kim Il-sung's monolithic leadership system was settled, the word father added the meaning of one who provided socio-political life, or supreme leader. In North Korean society, the name and the role of the father are given within the extended family with the supreme leader at its head, while the name and the role of the mother derive from their childbearing and child-rearing roles within the individual family.
Another hallmark of the gender rhetoric in the Kim Jong-un period is that it prioritizes maternal instincts and socially growing and practicing them. North Korea has given women the twin jobs of 1, a laborer to expand the communist economy, and 2, a mother who nurtures their children into cultured members of society. The state has intentionally given women a legal and institutional instrument to go back and forth between the home and society by delegating functions like child nurturing and housework to society. Such a trend is not changing in the Kim Jong-un period. North Korea has recently enlarged the realm of nurturing and care to the entire society, moving some of the tasks of social welfare, nurturing, and education from the government to women. Unlike previous discourse that prioritized professional women, this discourse reconstructed the feminine identity around childbirth.
A recurring demand seen throughout the Second to the Fourth Congress was repeated childbirths. North Korea appraises women with numerous children as maternity heroes and women who take care of orphans or children with incurable conditions as effort heroes. The Fourth Congress established Mother's Day, awarded the maternity hero name to many women, and symbolized them as heroes. Since Kim Jong-un's ascension to power, the tendency to broaden maternal instincts to a broader society rather than conforming to the typical gender roles inside the genetic family, mother, housewife, daughter-in-law, has grown. For instance, women have been termed revolutionary comrades of the gunner husband and sisters and mothers of the soldiers, both highlighting women's supporting responsibilities in the People's Army.
Planned weddings based on the parents' social standing are still the norm, although love marriages are becoming increasingly common among the younger generations. Regardless of gender, everyone favors someone with a good class background, today, and party members. When those with college degrees are appointed to a job with power, party workers and legal workers, they are deemed to belong to the highest echelons. In this domain, weddings frequently occur between families of similar backgrounds. The reason why the so-called swallows with swallows, magpies with magpies marriage convention still prevails is because there exists an action governing rule that minimizes mutual injury when one family's flaws hurt the other family.
While the practice is for the men to prepare the house and for the women to prepare the 5 closets and 6 appliances, marriage processes have changed in the Kim Jong-un era. The upper class in urban households with significant influence has been building a culture of sharing the costs of weddings equally. They are splitting the costs equally regardless of gender and are more inclined to hold the wedding at specialized wedding halls rather than at residences.
In May major towns like Pyongyang, generational differences stand out clearly. Dating has become normal among college students. Aside from today and power-concerned upper-class families, men and women prefer love matches to planned marriages. Ever since it became possible for female party members to be high-ranking officials, female college graduates began serving in the military to acquire party membership, pushing the average age of marriage for women to their early 30s. Urban upper-middle-class women are demonstrating new trends in the age of marriage, marriage culture, and life plans for social activities after marriage.
While dating has become a trend among the younger generation since the full-blown marketization in the 2000s, marriages in most of the regions other than Pyongyang and other large towns are still primarily facilitated by family, co-workers, or neighbors. In most mediated marriages, the conditions and status of a person operate as the most crucial factors. Though differences exist, the female's riches and livelihood skill sets are bargained against the male counterpart's employment, today, and capacity. The conditions that women seek in a potential partner include money, background, and the chance of further development. Women favor vocations that either make a lot of money or can assist in developing wealth. Aside from occupations that bring in foreign currencies, women prefer men with uniforms, such as judges, military officers, security officers, and Ministry of State security personnel or high-ranking officials. Women often favor drivers or doctors who can make a side income. As backgrounds, ladies generally search for decent today and the parent's socioeconomic position. Although political power, expressed by party membership, does not resonate as powerfully as it did before the financial crisis, it is still regarded as a crucial marital requirement. Political power does not only provide political rewards but also creates the foundations for collecting socioeconomic capital and producing prosperity. The possibility of further development implies becoming a party member after serving in the military and being smart enough to graduate college, provided his spouse offers financial assistance or has already graduated college.
Even amongst the maternity discourse and the gender discourse that promotes refamiliarization in the Kim Jong-un era, marital institutions that define and link the cell family are breaking apart. Many marriages are happening outside the conventional marriage frameworks, and many alterations are occurring to the structures, notably amongst the younger generations. The most conspicuous abnormality is simply avoiding marriage. Recently, many women have postponed getting married due to the severe economic and domestic difficulties that come along with weddings. Also, many defector women indicate that the average age of marriage is growing. Women's avoidance or hesitance of marriage is tied to the gender system, which takes for granted women's economic duties.
Increasingly, even individuals who get married often go through premarital cohabitation or do not register their marriage even after their wedding until they have children. Such phenomena are happening not just along the border regions but also in the inland areas. Recently, premarital cohabitation has become more acceptable if it leads to a marriage thereafter. In other words, cohabitation is being viewed in the same manner as cohabitation founded on marriage in South Korea. However, premarital cohabitation that ends in a breakup generally leads to social condemnation on the woman's side.
What requires notice in North Korea's marriage culture is the relative concentration of power distributions depending on today. Previously, the Songbun party membership system severely controlled work assignments and marriages. However, after the financial crisis in the 1990s, new policies appeared to have provided preferential treatment to people with economic ability. Previously, defectors from South Korea or returnees who returned to North Korea from China or Japan upon liberation or during pre- and post-war were labeled as having uncertain songbun and were barred from quality employment and intermarriages. However, since the 2000s, many returnees have been allocated to various prominent positions by financially contributing to the party and the military through a range of cooperative companies. Although they today have returnee backgrounds, they achieved fame through economic strength, which also provided them with social status. Although it cannot be generalized, such marriages between magpies and swallows actually exist.
Some orphaned lower middle-class women who are under no protection of their parents often intermarry people who are affluent and powerful but have physical or social problems. Though such intermarriages have been conventional in the past, the rise of marketplaces has been demonstrated to drive a pragmatic expansion of interclass marriages. Many women in bad today also earn a fortune in the marketplaces and marry men in good today. Whereas female merchants with a bad fortune were mainly overlooked in the past, women with the business ability to provide for the family and the capital and personal contacts to help husbands thrive have been increasingly respected.
Marriage cases from the 2000s imply that gender roles and interactions among married couples were still founded around the grand socialist family standard. According to the norm, persons who create a family are loyal to the supreme leader and the party, accountable for the livelihoods of their family, and bear the duty and responsibility to nurture their children. To sustain the grand socialist family, which refers to North Korean society as a whole, individual families function as sites for fostering and protecting warriors of the socialist revolution. Prominent North Korean dictionaries define moms in many ways but classify fathers as husbands of mothers. The definition implies that fathers do not have official roles in the household. On the other hand, women have responsibilities over housekeeping, childcare, social mobilization work, and duties to honor and obey their spouses.
Under such social norms and atmospheres, urban upper-class women in Pyongyang and other large cities rely on the rations and goods provided by their husbands' workplaces, obey their husbands, and focus on housework and childcare while they are exempt from mobilization labor via inmanbun, People's Unit, activities. To prevent the knock on the door calls to mobilize labor for inmanbun, People's Unit, activities, they normally pay monthly fees. Amongst the upper-class families that are promised rations and income, the revolutionary good wife wise mother norm is rigidly observed. However, married couples in their 30s typically perceive a husband's domineering and coercive behavior that was popular in their parents' generations as old school.
Within the various households that make up the grand socialist family, women support their children and husbands through housework, child nurturing, and selling items in the market and join in the mobilization of labor for the Women's Union and the People's Units. However, they are excluded from social acknowledgement within the male-centered state patriarchy. They receive neither recognition within the family for assisting the in-laws nor societal protection against life-threatening domestic abuse. Amid terrible economic situations, they suffer from the pangs of intensive labor and the scars of intra-family gender hierarchy.
Among young North Koreans, dating has become increasingly prevalent. Within the North Korean official discourse, true love has been portrayed as revolutionary comradeship. However, when observed from case studies, North Korean women's love tales diverge not only from revolutionary comradeship, but also from those of people in their 40s. The love stories of present-day 20-year-old ladies in North Korea are actual romantic stories. The channels that offer North Korean women the idea of romantic love include Western cultural materials such as movies, dramas, and music. During the economic crisis, North Korean individuals brought in numerous things from China, which included South Korean, Chinese, and American movies, dramas, music, and digital gadgets that played the contents. The music and films flowed via trade channels and were distributed all around the country, altering the perceptions and behaviors of North Korean women. The input of a new culture from the external world led to a change in sexuality where women began to actively show love within a partnership.
South Korean and Chinese movies and dramas are far more straightforward in displaying the emotional and passionate love relationships that are rarely represented in the North Korean media. The sensation of love represented in films carried over to the country's young women. The style of interactions and relationships portrayed in media materials gradually alters the next generation, the awakened generation, to behave differently.
Romantic love has gone beyond touching the emotions of individuals and entered into the everyday lives of women and their generations. Through such a force, romantic love has fused with the marital structure. Whereas past generations were wed through mediations focusing on the conditions of one's counterparts, modern generations associate love with marriage. In reality, many North Korean women in their 20s equate the practice of romantic love to marriage as their turning point in life, autonomously pioneering their life roots. Marriage as a fulfillment of love and a happy marriage life afterward have both become areas of independent living subject to individuals' decisions.
Intimacy is a transactional negotiation of personal bonds by equals, which is a feature of romantic love, is developed by the special activity of dating. Dating styles differ across locations and age groups. The elder generation's dating consisted of dodging other people's gaze and secretly meeting in parks or under street lamps. However, the younger generation's dating has become considerably more open and diverse. Especially in Pyongyang and other large cities, dating takes place in various cultural spaces like playgrounds, community service centers, roller skater areas, swimming pools, movie theaters, and karaoke bars. Contrary to large cities, rural regions lack appropriate places for dating. Therefore, young couples move outside their towns and meet in private places or parks in neighboring towns.
Recently, with external influences from Chinese movies and South Korean plays, more people have begun engaging in physical relationships. North Korea lacks areas to establish sexual intimacy. The social perception of physical touches or premarital sexual intercourse differs between regions. In Pyongyang or places on the border with China, many couples are seen holding hands or crossing arms. This is not the situation in rural areas. Various new practices of sexuality are generally occurring in the forms of free love, physical intimacy, and premarital cohabitation in North Korea. However, such societal shifts are not issues of discussion in the public domain. North Korea's basic and secondary education generally lacks any type of sex education. The second-year junior middle school curriculum in the basic skills topic expects teachers to teach female hygiene only to female pupils, although the textbook for that subject does not contain any material on this issue. Most interviewees also don't recall receiving any teaching on menstruation, pregnancy and delivery, sexual awareness, or birth control. With no sexual education taught at schools, North Korean women obtain information on sexual intercourse, birth control, abortion, pregnancy, and childbirth from females around them, such as moms, female friends, and female neighbors. The most trustworthy sources of information are older female friends who are old enough to date.
While married women's use of birth control and abortion can be interpretable at the level of demographic control of state power, single women's use of birth control and abortion is directly tied to sexual self-determination. In North Korea, intrauterine devices were adopted as a means of contraception in the early 1980s, and abortion became legal in 1983 to help manage the population boom. However, all these adjustments were applied only to married women. Given the evidence that a student's pregnancy leads to expulsion, premarital pregnancies seem to be seen as hurting socialist traditions and customs, even leading to the woman being at a social disadvantage. Recently, as the younger generation became more open about relationships with the opposite sex, premarital sex, birth control, and abortion have become serious topics for North Korean women. Although premarital sex has become more prevalent, premarital sex entails extreme responsibilities for women, so women fret over and over about sleeping with a man. During premarital intercourse, males rarely utilize contraception, leaving the burden of birth control to women. Schools do not provide any education on birth control. Therefore, young women spread information about birth control among themselves.
In North Korea, two sorts of birth control devices are frequently used: contraceptive pills and rings, which are intrauterine devices. Although condoms are known to women, not many use them. Pills are available at the local drug houses, but taking the medicine is laborious and costly, so only the rich or those who want to keep the words from spreading take them. Installing intrauterine devices is especially challenging for single women. Therefore, women often fall pregnant during their dating processes. In North Korea, too, one does not have to live with someone they're dating, so women who do not desire marriage or to have children commonly choose to pursue an abortion. Most abortions occur at private clinics or residences where doctors visit to perform the surgery.
North Korean women share knowledge among similar age groups and engage in diverse sexual acts unaccommodated by public discourse. They utilize birth control and pursue abortions through unauthorized medical institutions to retain a basic level of sexual self-determination in the middle of a culture that imposes the burdens of sexual interactions on women. However, because birth control and abortion operations occur at unofficial medical institutions, women are always vulnerable to hazards ranging from hygiene difficulties to medical accidents. North Korean women are practicing sexuality beyond the bounds of public sexuality discourses and societal standards, yet these activities are not protected specifically because they are beyond the public discourse.
North Korean women assimilate what they have seen and heard from media content in the real world, notably clothes. North Korean women try to copy South Korean women from South Korean dramas, apply South Korean middle-class house interior design to their homes, and speak in a gentle, Seoul dialect to their partners, reifying the virtual reality in their North Korean surroundings. In North Korea, a woman's appearance and attire were subjects of government control and regulation rather than a method of self-expression. Also, women's efforts to present themselves were regarded as the products of decadent foreign cultures. However, when Kim Jong-un came to power, controls on women's appearances relaxed, and the light industry that produced cosmetics and clothes flourished, leading to increased consumption of appearance-related products.
The breach in the government's laws on women's appearances enhanced young women's interest in their bodies as expressions of personality. Similarly, various lifestyle patterns established from a style of appearance and consumption habits garnered popular interest in the past, a phenomenon dubbed chusai. The phenomenon was mostly about following a communal trend. On the other side, modern attention to women's appearances and attire is more oriented toward individualized self-expression.
In conclusion, while the topic of sex life in North Korea may be cloaked in secrecy and speculation, it is apparent that the people of this nation, like anywhere else on the globe, crave closeness, emotional ties, and the ability to explore their own needs. The cultural and political context impacts their approach to relationships and sexuality, but it is crucial to remember that individuals in North Korea are not defined exclusively by their government or societal expectations. As we strive for a greater knowledge of North Korea and its people, it is vital to address the topic of sex life with care, empathy, and respect. By developing a caring discussion, we can question preconceptions, break down barriers, and strive towards fostering an atmosphere where every individual can freely express their sexuality and experience satisfying relationships.
While there may be constraints and problems experienced by citizens living in North Korea, it is crucial to appreciate their tenacity and the universal human spirit that craves love, connection, and happiness. By shedding light on this complicated facet of life within the nation, we can contribute to a more thorough understanding of the North Korean people, ultimately promoting a sense of solidarity and empathy that transcends boundaries. In the end, let us remember that debates about sex life should not be reduced to ordinary curiosity or shocking attraction. Instead, let us approach this topic with open minds, striving to learn and empathize with the different perspectives of people living in North Korea. By doing so, we can contribute to a more compassionate world where all people are acknowledged, respected, and empowered to explore their own sexual identities and wants.